The greatest show in the galaxy is an enigma wrapped in a Rubik's Cube and then parcel taped in a big jack-in-a-box of extravagant madness. Whilst it's probably not that unusual for a Sylvester McCoy adventure to be this offbeat, a lot of them were, there is something about this particular serial that's just so damn good it's impossible not to sing its praises. It also happens to be one of the Doctor Who adventures that I missed out on in my younger years, and I wonder what I'd have made of it if I watched it back in the early 90s. To be fair, I'd have probably hated it. I'd have probably screamed for a Pertwee classic with some credible alien creatures and unit doing stuff. But I'm a wise old man now, and have soaked in other forms of entertainment besides Doctor Who, and have therefore seen a lot of value that a spectacle such as this one can generate. I mean, on the surface, it all looks a bit silly, right? Some of the costumes, the army of robot clowns, not in a bad way of course, just more in a way that makes it easy to think that you're actually watching something that would have nestled comfortably in a late 80s children's BBC show. But however you look at it, and you can trust me here, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy is a brilliant bit of work. I love surrealism in bite-sized doses, and one of my other favourite TV shows is the timeless space opera Farscape. And anybody who knows that, and knows this, will definitely understand the correlation of styles that I'm hinting at here. It's got nothing to do with cowboys. There's a lot to digest in this story, and I'm about to take the deep dive. If you don't want anything spoiled, click away now, but then come back and watch the video. Welcome. From the very opening, and after some disorienting breaking of the fourth wall, Ace and her juggling Time Lord mentor land on the planet Seganax, and are mysteriously prompted to check out the latest show in town. But the sinister undertone is soon apparent. Across the desert landscape of this world, a squadron of moody clowns are roaming the highway. Discarded bits of machinery are on the attack. Kites with eyes soar menacingly above. I mean, how late 80s, early 90s is that shot there? Marvellous. I love it. It isn't long before the Doctor and Ace gather a rabble of misfits on their way to the circus. There's Captain Cook, the intergalactic explorer, his assistant plus werewolf Mags, and other characters include this child, this well-hard biker, Shane McGowan and Matt Bellamy out of Muse. I'm joking about those last two. These two are actually former employees of the circus, and they're in a right old kerfuffle because something nasty and otherworldly is now controlling this once wholesome resource of family entertainment. Pull back the curtain and terror lies in wait. It's showtime, but here's the caveat. If your act fails to appease the crowd and receive a good score, then you will be destroyed. There's a chance that you might be forced into this against your own will, like being thrown into a gladiatorial arena. Or maybe you get roped into the big fat vanity trap of thinking you're the next big star of the show. And this is exactly what happens to the Doctor, of all people. Boy, does he kick himself afterwards. I love this scene where he is called out by the ringmaster and he gets all flattered and modest, and everything he says the ringmaster responds to in rhyme form. The whole intense bizarreness of this serial comes into play right here. Those damn clowns. I love them. So League of Gentlemen. In fact, every character in this serial is played really well, and that's one of the things that ensures that this particular trip stays fun and alive throughout. This ringmaster, this mystic Meg lady, and the clown chief appear on the surface like they are the big moustache-twirling baddies of the piece. But the truth is, and this is another great reason why I really like this adventure, is that they are also coming apart at the seams, as the struggle to appease their masters gets ever more disastrous. They end up going into a right panic before giving each other up just to keep the show running. How creepy is that? Anyway, it does indeed turn out that the Psychic Circus is as much an unwitting player in this cruel cosmic game as anyone else. So who is in control? And who really is the star of the show? It is, of course, the fans. Or to put more accurately, the gods of Ragnarok. Yep. That's who was pulling the strings all along, the gods of Ragnarok. And they have undergone a kind of hostile takeover of the circus brand to ensure that they remain entertained for a goodly amount of time to come. A completely self-serving binge of fun for them, and nothing more than that, bunch of gits. Well, the Doctor ain't gonna stand for that. And this really does look like a job for Doctor number 7. You see, every Doctor did kind of have their own field of expertise, and the adventures which were written well enough had stories that matched the aura of that particular Doctor. Having recently read the Time Worm Revelation novel for another video, I started to form the idea that the 7th Doctor's speciality was not so much the otherworldly, or even the dark and scary, but the outright surreal. He himself was probably the most surreal of all Doctors. He got mistaken for Merlin, for crying out loud. He had this unrivaled ability to break out of narrative conventions and jump right into the eye of the storm of strangeness, and then play that particular hand better than anyone else in the room. And that's literally what he does in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. This adventure is where Sylvester McCoy's Doctor thrives, an intergalactic circus. I mean, yeah, you can sort of imagine Troughton, Tom or Smith doing that, but McCoy, he just fits right in here like a glove. This proud disregard for the norm can be heard in lines such as "one small step for mankind and one giant leap," or words to that effect. Absolute gibberish, and I approve immensely. Anyway, the gods of Ragnarok attempted to snare the Doctor in their own time-space, and yet they probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that's what happens. Barely a scratch. Great stuff. Look at him there. So a couple of months back, I received a request in the comments to make a video about this serial. My turnaround is dire. And that particular description of this show is, as far as I can tell, bang on the money. Metatextual is definitely the right word for it. It's clear how strikingly self-aware Greatest Show in the Galaxy is, and what I drew from the serial may be stupidly obvious because I seem to be developing this talent for embarrassing myself at late. I think that besides a lot of other things in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, Doctor Who wasn't just having a jab at itself, but us the viewers as well. And there we are, look, that's us right there, eating our snacks and dishing out our critiques all zombified. The fact that we are in this instance also the gods of Ragnarok is only partially relevant. You might not think that this comparison is overly apparent from the word go, and this surreal psychic circus can be interpreted in a number of different ways, but for me it all becomes clear when this little guy turns up. The generic stereotype of a Doctor Who nerd. A late 80s anorak with the glasses and cardi to boot, and the psychic circus is his Doctor Who. See how outside opinions of him change for the worse as soon as he declares his love for this brand. See how his knowledge is encyclopedic, his passion for collecting memorabilia boundless. And see how, and this is the crucial part, he states that this psychic circus product was, and I quote, not as good as it used to be. This was of course the general diagnosis of Doctor Who in the late 80s. Word on the street was, it had gone crap. Its best ideas were behind it, it had gone too far off beat, and its desperation to try out any outlandish idea to entertain the viewers was borderline tragic. And here it is, pulling out whatever stops it can to pacify the fans. There are other throwaway moments that you can use to support this idea. The Doctor scoffing at this poster because it says fun for all the family, and Doctor Who did at this point have a rep for being far too nasty and intense for kids. And I even see the characters Captain Cook and Mags as weird two-dimensional caricatures of the Doctor and Ace themselves. Perhaps as an earnest projection of what people had perceived the Doctor's character to have become in its troubled years post-Davidson, whether it was true or not. But here's what really makes my head spin. I think that this metaphor is more applicable now than it was back in 1988. In 1988, society could only imagine how we gorge on entertainment today. I mean, it's crazy. The volume of content at our fingertips, etc. You know, I don't need to tell you your own life. But people want it fast and now. And that, in some cases, can unfortunately breed a mentality of cold reciprocation and excessive entitlement in everything people watch. The viewer can sometimes, not always, but sometimes be a cruel beast, sitting on a pedestal with a misguided sense of godliness, when not even Sylvester McCoy performing magic tricks can suffice, even though if he came to my village and did that, I would go flipping off my head. Alternatively, you can plant the idea that the gods are a greedy corporate entity, who have leached all the natural charisma of this entertainment resource and turned it into something it would have once despised. Again, something that might be ever so slightly more relevant now than it was back then. Whatever symbolic gloss you want to brush over this, I consider this serial way ahead of its time, and alarmingly so. This might not be the Doctor Who experience for you, but what you can't do is call it dull. I think The Greatest Show in the Galaxy is a very innovative piece of work. Tell me your thoughts on The Greatest Show in the Galaxy and what you think it all meant. And while you're there, don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a good one.